As he joins us on the line, Kevin Klein from Japers Rink in his weekly stop by here. It is Tuesday. It is 4:30, and that's what we do around here. Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, pretty good. In the second round, we got nothing to complain about right now. I want to get your take real quick before we move on to the questions of round number 2 and Caps versus Penguins. Give me your take overall on your views on the first round as a whole. Philadelphia extending the series out to 6 games. The prevailing logic is that Michael Neuvirth stretched it maybe a game further than a lot of other people would have guessed. But by and large, I felt like this series was what we thought it would be. A series that the Capitals had the better offensive weapons. They had the better D. They got the best of the chances. Their special teams were certainly superior in every single way. Power play and penalty kill. Mix in a game 5 where they had 8 billion shot attempts and couldn't get through. It was pretty much the way we thought it would go, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I don't even have too much to add about it. I think that maybe Michael Neuvirth extended it. It kept it from being a clean sweep, frankly. If you look in game 4, that third period where the Caps really just turned up the heat and barraged him and nothing could get through. Oshie scored the one. But other than that, he closed the door. And I think that if you're not looking at Michael Neuvirth playing the beginning of what turned out to be probably the best 3-game stretch of his career, you might be looking at a Caps team that is coming into a Penguin series with over a week of rest. So I really do think that it was just about Neuvirth really kind of extending his game and kind of introducing a little bit of anxiety that the Capitals fans are used to experiencing in the playoffs. But when you really break it down, when you look at the numbers and you give the series a critical examination, I think it's pretty clear that Washington exerted the force of their will on Philadelphia in the first round, and winning in 6 games is nothing to scoff at, even if it is a 1 seed over an 8 seed. It's tough to win 4 out of 7 against anyone in the league, much less a playoff team, and the Caps did it in 6, so they get an extra couple days of rest, and we all know how important this can be at this time of year.
Yeah, a day of rest yesterday, and then getting back to practice today. Brooks Orpik back and skating today, although no timetable and certainly not ramping up to game shape quite yet, but certainly good to see number 44 back out there. On the subject of defense, Matt Niskanen and Karl Alzner, as good a shutdown pair as you can probably find, maybe this season, certainly in the postseason, whenever the Capitals needed a stop, that's who they've turned to. And we mentioned it right before you came on here. With all due respect to the Philadelphia Flyers, they didn't have a lot of the weapons that Pittsburgh has, and we'll talk about the balance here in a moment. But right at the top, Sidney Crosby had a terrible first couple of months. And now, since the coaching change and finishing out the final, call it 2/3 of the regular season, one of the best players in the NHL, again, going head-to-head with Alex Ovechkin. That obviously going to be one of the big storylines a lot of people are following. But let's talk a little bit about how number 87 gets shut down. It's got to start with Niskanen, and it's got to start with Alzner, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those guys were phenomenal in the first round. I think they were only on the ice for 1 goal against Philadelphia, and that one being kind of a one that you usually probably see Braden Holtby stop. I think a shot went around an Alzner screen and snuck by him. So they very easily could have spent an entire series without allowing a goal. And in Claude Giroux, nothing to turn your nose up at when it comes to offensive talent. But obviously he is no Sidney Crosby, who absolutely torched the Rangers in the first round. But I think a lot of that has to do with the state of the Rangers' blue line. I think the Capitals are way better off there. And, in a guy like Niskanen, you have someone who played with Crosby and therefore against him in practice all the time during his years in Pittsburgh. So maybe he kind of has picked up a little bit of an idea of how to be more effective defensively against him. But I think the reality is the expectation can't be to shut down Sidney Crosby. He's one of the best players in the world, and he's going to find a way to have an impact on the game. I think what the real task is keeping him in check, not letting him dominate, not letting him score every game, not letting him take over a game, which is effectively what he did against the Rangers and has done so well under Mike Sullivan And frankly, Sidney Crosby under Mike Sullivan is just a completely different player than he was under Mike Johnston. So the Caps have the distinct pleasure of dealing with that, and Alzner and Niskanen specifically. But
yeah, pleasure being the operative word there, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding.
The secondary scoring, just to switch gears a little bit, Kevin. I mean, as far as we can talk about 87, and we can talk about even Evgeny Malkin for that matter. But I think one of the things that we've seen going back to the last time these teams got together in March, and that was not a good game for Washington, as the Penguins ended up scoring 6 goals. Secondary scoring, ton of it. In fact, I don't know who you want to call the third line at this point, but the way that Nick Bonino and his line with Carl Hagelin on his left and with Phil Kessel on his right, that's not really a third line. That's like a second line at this point. And then throw in Kuhnhackl, throw in Rust. Connor Sheary has bumped up and been very impressive, certainly was in the Rangers series. This team goes a whole lot deeper at this point than just the traditional suspects.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention Evgeny Malkin in that lineup there, so that's another guy, and that's exactly the next point that I was going to get to. You want to keep Sidney Crosby under control, but where you really want to mitigate as well are the tertiary and the quaternary scoring that the Penguins have been getting. They've just been firing on all cylinders. I think Tom Kuhnhackl, Matt Cullen, and Brian Rust, which is their fourth line, all had 3 points in 5 games against the Rangers. So you're looking at 9 total points from your fourth line in 5 games in the playoffs. And that's just incredible support for your top guys. And you're right. I mean, familiar face in Eric Fair on the third line, who I think might be skating with Evgeny Malkin right now. I think it's hard to think of Malkin as a third line center and hard to think of him as secondary scoring, but the way that they've got it set up right now, everything's just firing on all cylinders, and it seems like no matter what player they put anywhere, it's going to work. Connor Sheary is kind of the belle of the ball in Pittsburgh right now. He's come out of nowhere and playing on the top line with Sidney Crosby, and he also had a great series against the Rangers. So I think that the real key for the Caps is to minimize the dominance of Sidney Crosby, which I think every fan of the NHL has come to expect over the years. But then more than minimize, you need to eliminate the production from the guys who historically haven't been producers, because if they're getting it from top to bottom, it's going to be a real problem. The Caps are better off than the Rangers in that sense. They're just stronger on the blue line, better systems play, and you don't want to necessarily point a finger at Henrik Lundqvist, who's the last person to really blame in that situation. But Braden Holtby has had a historic playoff career to date, and he continued that in the first round. And if he can step up to the task in the second round, it's going to go a long way.
Let's talk a little bit about special teams, Kevin, because for the Capitals, it was head and shoulders dominance over the Flyers in the first round, scoring 8 power play goals. The penalty kill was absolutely beastly. To keep up both sides of that ledger, you're going to have to do it against a better team this time around in Pittsburgh. How do the special teams match up, and where can the Capitals exploit the penalty kill here for Pittsburgh as they try to, with whatever chances they get as far as power play goes, that they can try and get a leg up on them here in this best of 7?
Yeah, well, the special teams matchup is going to be really great to watch in this one. Everyone who's listening to the show knows how great the Capitals' power play has been all season long, and they were pretty much unstoppable for the first 3 games of the Flyers series. Well, Pittsburgh's special teams played much the same way in the first series. They lit up the Rangers. I think that they had like a 40% success rate in that first round, and the PK unit was just as good, and that's translated over from the regular season when they had the 5th best power play on the year, or excuse me, the 5th best penalty kill unit on the year, and they've got 2 dangerous units there as well, and Malkin's back and firing all cylinders. So, but the big difference is now the Capitals, you have one of the best power plays in the league going up against one of the best penalty kills in the league in Pittsburgh. And you have that on the other side of the coin as well. And I think the similarities, what we're going to see from Pittsburgh, is way more similar to what we saw in the final 4 games of that Flyers series, where basically the PK unit kind of stopped sitting back and letting Nick Backstrom survey the ice and make a quick decision. They pressured really fast and made you get rid of the puck and not necessarily get the look that you want. And that's what Pittsburgh did to the Rangers. As far as exploiting it, yeah, I'm no systems analyst when it comes to these things, but I think where we saw a lot of success and opportunity in the Flyer series was from John Carlson firing the puck and firing the puck and firing the puck, and eventually Alex Ovechkin started getting more open. So I think what has led to a lot of success for the Washington power play in the past is when you get guys who aren't Ovechkin who begin taking the open shots that are afforded them because the defense is so concerned with those other guys. So a guy like Nick Backstrom or Yevgeny Kuznetsov, if they start firing the puck when they make that little pivot move in towards the circle and they shoot instead of pass, all of a sudden there's a threat coming from another spot on the ice. And I think that you have to make as many spots on that power play a threat rather than just the Ovi spot, which everybody knows about, or John Carlson.
Kevin, one more thing before we let you go. The second line for Washington in this series, it was a tough stretch for Andrei Burakovsky, a goal for Evgeny Kuznetsov, but coming on the power play. And for Justin Williams, we even saw the change with Marcus Johansson moving up there in Game 6. Whatever the configuration is, to beat a Pittsburgh team that is as balanced as they are, Capitals are going to have to answer that balance, and that means a little bit better out of the second line, too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not that they played poorly. There was a lot of kind of the underlying data that showed that they spent a lot of time in the offensive zone and had a lot of good chances, and they didn't convert on them. And oftentimes it was because they didn't even shoot the puck. There was a lot of overpassing that I think that line was guilty of. So hopefully that's kind of something that just goes the way of all flesh here in the second round. Another thing that I think contributed to that was Andrei Burakovsky getting bullied a little bit on the boards. It felt like there was a whole lot of offensive possessions that ground to a halt after Burakovsky would take a hit on the boards and lose the puck or get knocked off the puck, and that cycle game would get interrupted. And I think that was a component of Philadelphia's game. I think that the ice is going to be a little bit more open and a little bit more available to cycle through against Pittsburgh, allowing the skill sets of a guy like Andrei Burakovsky to come through a little bit more. I think when you combine that with Yevgeny Kuznetsov maybe taking a shot or two from the high slot instead of looking for the extra pass, and then Justin Williams breaking out of a funk, you should probably see a little bit more production from those guys in the second round if they come back together and it's not Marcus Johansson on that line like we've seen in practice and towards the end of the first series.
Well, Kevin, we appreciate your insights as always, our regular Tuesday conversation. And by the time that we chat next, we'll be at least waist deep into round number 2, and it should be fun. Hey, thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks a lot, John.